Get some royalty-free music up. But hello. Today, I need to update my mealworm containers. And I want to info dump about some things that I am doing, some things that I am learning, and some things that I am planning on doing. So first I need to get just some. Oh no, I'm not gonna. No. I want just music, please. Thank you. Because I need to have something playing. 80 synthwave. Perfect for me. Okay. Look at this. Okay. So basically, what we're doing with the mealworms, let's start there. These mealworms now, when did I start them up? These I have been growing for... Shit, man. 3 months now? 2 months? No, I think it's only been 2 months. So I started with 100 mealworms that I bought at the pet store. And now I have about, oh god, I think my count was like 70 adult beetles. So we're going to do a new count today because we're going to move everything over to new containers. And let's just put this over here for now. And then we're also going to prep up a new container, and that's why I'm heating up the soldering iron. It'll make sense what we're doing in just a bit. Oh gosh, I was making coffee. You're seeing the ADHD take over. But why am I breeding these mealworms? Well, the mealworms are a very, it's a very simple answer. What I am doing with them is that I'm using these for ecology courses, for population ecology courses, and essentially as an educational prop, but also I am using them or breeding them to sell to like chicken farmers and for people with exotic pets. I'll probably just go to the pet stores because that's easier. 1 second. But I also just like breeding mealworms. I used to do it when I was a teenager, whenever I was growing up in, yes, there we go. Growing up in my parents' pet store, my family's pet store, I bred mealworms. Sorry, I'm getting a winter storm warning. Yeah, basically I bred them professionally to sell to other people, and I decided, well, to restart it up. So, as you can see right now, here we go. This is the breeder bin of the beetles. So these are the adults. So it's a pretty basic setup. But yeah, so it's just oats and potatoes for the moisture, right? Because the potatoes inside are kind of, well, they have moisture, they have water for these guys to eat. But then in this other container, one below it, we have some tiny mealworms. But first, I just need to, ooh, that was a bad noise. First, just need to get my coffee going. But there's another part of this stream because I'm setting up a few projects and I'm just getting really interested in specifically like mesh-based ecology. Kind of sort of got into this mesh idea around when Hurricane Helene came through. So when all like the power lines went down, all like the telephones went down, people were still able to communicate using this like new mesh tech. It's sort of like walkie-talkies with your phones, right? So people could just communicate almost like Bluetooth, but you have to have a certain receiver set up and you have to be within proximity of other people. But the cool thing about that is like the more people that use it, you create a network of other people you can kind of like ping off of, right? So I was just like looking into that for fun, and then also for sort of re-looking into it again this year with the winter storms that came through here. And so I was like, well, how can people use it for ecology? How can we use it in a different capacity? Because the beauty of it is that it's like low power, super low power. The concept of it being a mesh network is actually really cool from a data collection standpoint for like stuff that I could talk about later. But there is also just a wide array of like really cool research projects that are coming out. So I don't think you can see this too well, but this was a paper that looked at using mesh technology for mountain climbers, right? In, I think, Indonesia? Yeah, Indonesia. So it's just because like there wasn't great tech, there wasn't great communication, there was difficult topography, like all the mountainscapes. So basically, people were still able to communicate locally with one another by having a network set up. So they put 4 receivers, essentially creating like a boundary line this way, and then the people there could kind of bounce off of those receivers and each other to form a local network. So, what's up, Dunn? Yeah. But yeah, so the concept then would be to set up that same type of network, but then for wildlife. So imagine instead of like those 4 receivers just talking to the climbers or whatever, imagine if instead it was in a little bitty backpack or even something as small as an RFID tag. So right now I am making some coffee, but I'm also setting up a few new mealworm containers while info dumping about some new research stuff that I'm getting into. So these mealworms, I need to take all of these beetles and move them to a empty container, but we need to make the empty container real quick. It's not too difficult. The only thing I do is I make little air holes for it. So you can see it on these. There's air holes all along the top, all the way around. And the way I do that is I just use a soldering iron. But yeah, so this is going to be the sort of system. It's like a rotation bin system, and right now I am trying to get the 3rd bin in the system. I will have a 4th bin that I will use eventually, but right now, sort of just now going. So I started with 100 mealworms, raised them up, turned them in the larvae stage, and now we are in the just generational stage. So we have a 1st generation, and yeah. So all I need to do is do the vent fan, and I'm going to turn on some music to drown out that vent fan, and then I'm just going to keep poking holes in this. Let's get a better view. But I'm also going to talk very, very loudly about mesh networks. So let's actually turn the music down then if I'm going to be talking over this. Okay, so mesh networks. So that's that thing I was talking about. Ooh, knocking over my hot sauce. Okay, so mesh networks are that system where, yeah, so imagine if we could set these up in the woods, right? So it's a difficult area, there's no cell service, there's no, great satellite service, right? And we can set up sort of stations. Let's get directly under that view. There we go. We can essentially set up stations all through the woods, okay? Maybe we set them up in a grid pattern every 250 meters, okay? I'm just sort of thrown out. Have you even grown a homunculus? I have a weird roommate story about that is unfortunately relevant to that. I'll say it at a different time because that one deserves like a stream on its own. But anywho, imagine you have these stations throughout the woods, okay? And they are low power, okay? All they're doing is they're just listening for a signal, okay? Same as like if you've ever done radio telemetry and you know what it is, and there's like a little transmitter. The little transmitter bit. Oops, sorry about this. Just need to pay attention, or else I'll burn myself. The little transmitter doesn't really need that much power, so it's just like a few batteries on it, like a few button cell batteries, and it can last for like a year, right? So it's super, super low power. Now imagine you have a bunch of stations that are running off of that low power, and all they're doing is searching for a signal. So they're not collecting any data, they're not doing anything like that, they're just searching for a signal. Now, on a wildlife, so a wildlife, that sounds so bizarre, on some animal. Imagine it's, a monkey or something, right? Just something that's like highly mobile, it's going through the woods, all over the place there. I guess we're in the jungles now, right? It also has a low power transmitter, okay? So it's also just pinging out every few minutes saying, hey, is there a receiver near me, okay? Now, both of those things are super low power, okay? But what happens is, when they can ping off of one of those towers, right, we can collect some really cool data. So one, we could set up some other transmitters that are only going to collect, temperature or humidity readings when that animal is there, right? When it pings. So instead of having to monitor 24/7, there we go. Instead of having to monitor 24/7, you can just then have these low power devices going on. Turn this off. Okay. Now, ooh boy, that is hot. So, there's another usage though. Because you have all of those in a system, like in a grid-based system, if it pings off of one of them, it can actually send a message to the network and ping off of all of them. And there's a paper that found, based on the differing signal strengths from each of those receivers, you can actually coordinate where the organism is. So instead of having to do radio telemetry where we go out with a big antenna and look for them, we could input just a very simple, I think it's just a RFID tag, essentially. Something low power that can last for years, and then all we have to really do is maintain that mesh network, which again, those batteries could last a year, but regularly you'd want to check them every few months. So then, instead of having to also influence the behavior of the animal by us tracking them and doing all this stuff, the animal is passively living and just constantly pinging off of these towers, which are very innocuous, make no noise, have no odor, nothing like that. So we can actually start to reveal really cool behaviors. Now, we can extend that mesh network even further, right? I found that you can set them up to have additional modules. So again, we said, like, if it pings off of this tower, we can now collect humidity and temperature and wind data, pressure, whatever you want to collect, doesn't really matter. So you can add on modules. There's another one that said, hey, why don't we also add on a camera trap? So instead of a camera trap relying on movement, which results in a ton of false positives, every time a leaf moves in front of a camera trap, it triggers, and then you have to go through and actually manually go through all of this data. Instead, you can set it up so that only when this RFID tag is triggered on those receivers do the cameras fire. And so you can set them up in a very particular setup. And remember, we talked about also the telemetry of it all. So if they can figure out a rough location, then those cameras could only trigger at that set point. This is really, really cool tech because it means we can set things up in more remote locations that may require less maintenance. That's something that I've particularly been getting interested in. Yeah, so we're on step 2 now of my mealworm process. So I'm going to move y'all, let me see, okay, surface light there. We need to count the beetles and move them to their new home. So I don't know where to put this. Oh, maybe I can just raise y'all up. Maybe that's all you need. But yeah, so kind of the purpose of this stream was for me to, ooh, goodness, it's not locking right. Oh, is this a, oh, never mind, I figured it out. Okay, sorry about that. My tripod was just being weird. And I'm cleaning up all of this afterwards, so, but yeah. Okay. So, yeah, now we need to transfer them over, and we have a few deaths that is bound to happen. I need to open up my Notion really quick and record the number. Okay, well, okay, so in this container we have our beetles. Let's angle you down so you can see even more. I think that needs, okay, sorry about this. Oh, wrong thing. I want to make sure you guys can see what I'm doing. Okay. Yep. Yeah. There we go. Okay. So, where is their oats? Where are their oats? Okay. There we go. So, all we're gonna do inside of this container is we're going to add just a few inches of our oats. So there are other ways to optimize this, right? By doing like more finely grained oats or finely ground oats. I just haven't done those. But we're going to transfer all of our beetles over. So the beetles like this cardboard. I just like to give them a little bit of shelter and shade. I also tend to put the potatoes on top of the cardboard. I find they mold like a lot less quickly that way. They just kind of fall into the oats while I'm moving them. But I'm going to get a count of all of our beetles as we transfer them over, just so I kind of know how many we have here. So here's one. Get off of me, buddy. 1, 2, 3. And inside of this here are eggs. Eggs and maybe some little larvae already, but these beetles have been laying eggs in here for about a month now. So 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay. I'll just move the dead over to a different pile. Get these out of here. There's going to be a lot of beetles inside of here. So normally if I had a finer ground oat, I could just use a sifter and really get through it. But I just don't have that capability. So let me put the dead ones into a Tupperware for now. Okay, and I'll count those up at a different time so I don't lose count that I have 8 beetles that I moved over. So yeah, we're having a lot of death here. That's kind of to be expected. I didn't have too many, so I started with 100 worms, 100 larvae from the pet store. And then I raised every single one of those up to beetles. And now those beetles have been breeding and laying eggs for me. So I know for a fact there are little larvae in the other container. So this is the second container these beetles were in. So we're going to raise up the next generation pretty soon. Oh, you're alive. Hi, buddy. So these are the adults of the mealworms. So they are darkling beetle types, right? And you know what's actually funny? Okay, so that's 9, by the way. So I've been doing a lot of trail work lately, going out, and we're kind of like rebuilding a lot of places after Helene came through here in wilderness areas. 10. And while we're digging, I keep finding wild mealworms, like wild type mealworms, or at least something that looks very similar. I think they're a different species of darkling beetle. But anyways, I am really curious about breeding some of these wild darkling beetles. Like, I am intimately curious about what that would look like. Because... Ooh. Where are my adults? Do I only have 10 left? Wow. Wow. Okay, 11. Wow. Wow. Don't let me end on a prime. That's disgusting. Okay. Wow. Oh. But we have new life. So it looks like I only have 11 adults left. You know, hey, that's to be expected. I haven't been taking care of them well. We've had crazy temperature fluctuations, but let me flip this around. But if we look very, very closely, can I zoom? I can. Look at this little spot. Can you see it? There. Can you see it moving? The little mealworms. So normally if I want to actually find worms in here, this is what I do. I just kind of shake it. And then I usually just look at the edges. So right there is some frass, some, poop or whatever, but you can see the little mealworm digging in. So the mealworms that are in this container, they'll just be raised up now. So we're going to give them some potatoes. We're going to give them a little piece of cardboard for cover. And then, yeah, we'll kind of just let this sit for a few months while they grow up. Now, we have 10 beetles in here. Let us now look at this container. This container was one of our first ones. So this was what? Look, we don't even have to shake it up. We can already see worms growing. So this one, again, we're just going to replace the potato, but we always need to check them because if you look inside, you can see our mealworms starting to grow and develop. Now, I have a blog on the website talking about what I'm doing with this project. This is the Million Mealworm Project. I'm going to be breeding mealworms up to 1 million, right? And all of this footage I'm going to use for like some video at some point. Okay, some like crazy in-depth video. But, ooh, we are already getting a lot of mealworms. This is so good. Yeah, okay. Yeah. Oh yeah, we got worms, baby. Okay, look at this stuff. Okay. So, So look, just gonna grab up a random handful. Worms. Let's see. Now, normally, if you kind of just root through it, yeah, you can just start to look for them. And there's going to be a lot more than you realize in here. So in a few weeks, a lot of these worms will be, like that big. But what I like to do, what I'm really picky about doing, is trying to keep this on a pretty good schedule. So I'm going to be exchanging these bins, rotating these bins every 2 weeks. That is the protocol that I am developing out. So I've been a little bit loose with it. I got to backdate things a little bit, get everything correct. But by doing it every 2 weeks, what it sort of ensures is that this container that is, pulled at week 6 and rotated in, all of the worms here are within a 2-week lifespan of each other, right? So it's not perfect right now, so we're gonna have like uneven sizes, but I would like for them to be reared up and molting at the same metamorphosing at the same time and changing at the same time. And these are very deep containers. I'm just doing that for making sure they don't climb out reasons, because I am doing this in my apartment. They don't know. But yes, so now we need to get the potatoes. Okay, and so now I'm just giving them potatoes. Potatoes are just what they need for moisture. It's what they need to not die. I'm going to start giving them more chunks. I just feel like they're not getting enough water because it just feels so dry, and the amount of beetle loss I have is just sort of indicative of that. So, I mean, I do have a lot of worms, so I'm not that picky. But I just chop the potatoes into 4s. I used to just do like all like my compost and leafy greens and stuff when I was doing insect breeding. I mean, I also bred roaches and a little bit of tarantulas, well, a bunch of like snakes and shit like that. But I found that being neater with my cutting and laying out, it just made everything easier. I had less mold and I had less issues. It also just seemed like I could control everything a little bit better. So yeah, I want to try and get all of the worms out of here. So here we go. Now they have. Okay, so what I'll do is, so you can see this potato has been in this container for like 2 weeks now, maybe 2 or 3 weeks. So it does have, a little bit of an outer layer of like dust and stuff. But if we cut inside, like deep, deep inside, we can still see that it has a lot of moisture. I don't know if you can really see it. Yeah, a little bit of that glare. But yeah, so potatoes are just like a really great source of moisture, but I'm just cutting out these mealworms right now. When I get to like when I have more, they'll just be acceptable losses essentially. But hey, I only got a few right now. Might as well take care of them. I can, if I really wanted to extend the life of these potatoes. Okay, I got them all out. Yeah, if I wanted to extend the life of these potatoes, I could just like cut off the outer layer and then use the excess moisture that's in here. But you get mold, man. It just gets gross. So make sure y'all can actually see the mealworms a little bit better. There we go. But yeah, so we can see here the beetles are already taking to the potato. I mean, I just tossed that in there, and this thirsty one's just right on top. So we had 100 worms. We metamorphosed them to 70 beetles, and now a few months later, we're down to, I think our total is 11 beetles. That might have been just because we had 2 ice storms that came through here last month, and the weather's just been up and down. So haven't been able to really keep them as perfectly warm as I'd want to. But that is changing. We're working on hopefully trying to get to a better place where I have more freedom. So yeah. But for right now, these beetles are going to be breeding in here for the next few months. Next 2 weeks, right? My protocol is switching them every 2 weeks. The worms that are in here are growing up. They probably have another month or 2 until we have more beetles from this round. But once we have the beetles from this round, it's going to be an explosion. Because instead of like 70 beetles, we're going to have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of beetles. And then those are going to ramp up again. So this is going to become extremely crazy in a short amount of time. So it's going to be very interesting planning these around my work. So I'll be out in the field 4 days at a time, back for 3. And then it's going to switch to 8 days out, 6 days back. So basically, I just don't even get to see them for a week. Then I come back and then, there's more and they're bigger and there's a lot that I got to do. But I like to be challenged. So yeah, the end goal of this is to get 1 million mealworms. And I want to do it because I want to show people how we can estimate population size using mark, capture, recapture. It's a statistical technique for estimating population size. And I realized that, everyone teaches it with the marbles, right? Everyone is like, you put 4 blue marbles in a jar and then 6 red marbles in a jar and you shake them all up and you take them out and then you have 3 red marbles and 1 blue marble. You mark them, you throw them back in. And it's like, yeah, that's cool, but animals aren't marbles, man. And so the other option would be to go like shoot squirrels with paintballs or something, but I think that's illegal and highly unethical. So instead, I decided to get mealworms from the pet store and breed up 1 million of them to prove that capture, mark, recapture can be used to estimate population size. And basically, we'll do some like small tests to do it. I'll pull out and I'll manually count out, 562 mealworms. We'll do a mark recapture, but then I want to go to 1 million because it's less than you think. And I think it makes for a really cool video title, right? Like this is all that it is just branding. And I think it's just going to be kind of fun to do it kind of for the memes. It'd be a funny little check note on my life. But we'll also use these mealworms. I want to use them for like educational videos, right? Because like I'm not just gonna make a video about mark recapture and be done with it and then throw them all in the trash. They'll be used for, well, like how we can actually do that, like an actual lesson on estimating population size with capture mark recapture. And then also I was like, oh, well, what else can we do with it? Well, we can have a real world examples of drift and selection. We can actually do some projects where we do natural selection on these organisms, right? Basically, where I am coming from is that I think these mealworms are just sort of a cool thing to have from a purely educational standpoint. And it's kind of fits in with some longer goals that I have. Plus, they can make me a bit of money. I'm gonna sell them to chickens, chicken farmers. Chickens don't have money. They can't pay you. But we can sell them to their farmers. So, but yeah, so this was a bit of an ADHD info dump about what I'm doing, about some mesh network ecology, and we created a brand new bin of our mealworms. So I need to get that masking tape, and I need to get a tracking system set up for these. But that is the stream, and I'm going to end it there. Goodbye.